coming in. So I'll get started with the housekeeping anyway. But hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this masterclass on how to fund your legal studies with BPP University. And we're really excited to have you here this afternoon. This is a very important topic for lots of you, and we hope that you'll enjoy this masterclass and find it informative too. We always start our masterclasses with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this session, you should understand how current students have successfully financed their legal training, know about the range of funding options available to you, from scholarships to government funding and private loans, and feel better informed about what you can do to help pursue your legal career, whatever stage you are at. So I'm going to hand over to Jonny and our student panellists in a moment, but firstly, just to run through our house rules. This session is being recorded, and you will receive the link to the recording in the follow-up email tomorrow. Do use the online question tool to ask your questions. We're going to have plenty of time for that at the end for Jonny and the panellists. We're also actually running another masterclass tomorrow at 3 p.m. and that one's about innovation and future of the law. So if you fancy hearing from top legal experts from Burgess, Salmon and Dentons about what's happening in the legal profession in terms of things like technology, business models and efficiency, please do sign up, and I will share the link to that in the chat. And we have another fantastic masterclass with BPP next month. That one is all about commercial awareness. I'm sure that will be popular, so we'll be sharing the link to that in the follow-up email. Okay, I'm just going to start with our poll that we usually do. Could you please let us know what stage you're at, just so our panellists here today can see where you're at, and that might help guide the conversation today. So I'm just going to give you a second to answer that, and then I will share those results. Okay, right, let me end that poll. Lots of undergrads with us today, which is great, and some non-law students, so it'd be great to offer some advice for you today. And if I just do our other poll that we have, which is, what is your biggest concern about funding your legal studies? Put a few options here. You might not resonate with any of those, but is it about balancing the tuition fees, the living expenses, the scholarships and grants? Is it just information about financial advice and resources, finding the right course for you, or is it something else? So great, a lot of you interested in finding out about scholarship and grants, and then also some people kind of concerned about that balance, which I'm sure will be covered by our students here today. Okay, oops, let me just stop sharing those. Okay, perfect. I'm now going to hand you over to Jonny and the panellists. I will disappear and I'll be back at the end. So Jonny, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bethany, and I hope that my coughing fit that I managed to keep at bay whilst you were doing your introduction stays away for the next hour or so. Welcome to the session, everyone. I'm Jonny Hurst. I'm a senior lecturer here at BPP. I'm head of outreach. I used to be a partner in a city firm many years ago, specialising in commercial property. On the side, as an independent project, I run a YouTube channel called SQE TV. So if you're interested in anything SQE, for some free advice, lots of videos, we've got over 100 on there. Do feel free to check that out. So for the course of this session, what we're going to be doing is focusing on, as Bethany said, how to fund your legal training. We thought, what better way to show how 3 students currently at BPP have actually managed to fund themselves to the point where they currently are in their studies. And what you'll find is that we've got one student who is studying for the bar, 2 are doing conversion courses, but both with a view to qualifying as solicitors via the SQE route. So quite a lot to unpack there. And what we'll do is we'll give you case studies in relation to each of them as we go through. So just to give you an idea, following this introduction, I'll give you a bit of an overview of the sort of range of options, many of which you'll be familiar with already, but I'm hoping that we'll give you a bit more detail on a lot of the headings that you'll probably be familiar with, but perhaps didn't know where to get the funding from, and so on, or weren't sure what the rules were, whether you qualified. And I think the case studies will really bring out a lot of the detail. Feel free to put questions into the chat or the Q&A function. We'll check those out. We may answer them as we go along. Sometimes it's easier to answer quite a few of them at the end, but if they're on the money in terms of what we're talking about, I'll try and take those questions as we go along. So don't be too shy about leaving your questions in the chat. And there'll be a few downloads for you to, and links for you to take away at the end. So, as I mentioned, just before we bring in San, Freya and Caitlin, how to fund your legal training. It's a session that we've run many times before. As somebody who comes from sort of a lower income background, as I did when I was qualifying as a solicitor, it was a massive thing for me. And a lot of these options didn't exist. But fortunately, there are more options available to students now. But unfortunately, compared to my day, it's more challenging financially to be able to get yourself to the door of law school. But hopefully, what you can see around this, you can call it a wheel of fortune if you like, but certain different categories of funding. So we're going to cover in the session law school scholarships. Specifically, we'll talk about the ones that BPP offers, because obviously this is a BPP session. But of course, if you are minded to apply to other law schools, I'm sure that they have some scholarships on offer as well. In addition to scholarships, there are some bursaries that are available through the admissions teams at universities that run separately to scholarships. They can sometimes be related to academic prowess, but also your financial circumstances as well. Or there might be certain alumni discounts effectively that are given to you as bursaries as you go through the process. The student loans company, you'll find out that some of our students today have managed to do a master's version of their course that they're studying, so that they can access over £12,000 worth of funding from the student loans company. And basically you're entitled to get that funding like you would do for your undergraduate funding. So if it's your first master's or first time you studied at master's level, you should be able to get access to that funding if you accessed the funding for your undergraduate degree. I'm afraid it's not available for international students as a general rule. More about that a bit later on. Private borrowing. So we'll talk about borrowing from banks and other institutions, but unfortunately the rate of interest and the rate you have to pay back that sort of funding ends up being a lot more stringent in terms of the T's and C's and the timetable than the student loans company finance. So as a default, I would always look at that as the first option to go to the student loans company, do a master's version of the course you want, because you'll be paying back the loan over a longer period and generally speaking at a lower rate of interest. Sponsorship by a law firm, something we'll talk about with a couple of our candidates today, because of course if you can be sponsored, that will sort out a lot of the financial issues if the funding for the fees is going to be covered, as well as maintenance whilst you're studying. Part-time study is certainly an option, and I think it's becoming much more common, particularly with those going down the SQE route. I've noticed that lately, that a lot of students are taking the part-time study option because they realise the SQE, and I would say the same for the BTC and the law conversion course, they're all challenging courses. And if you need to raise funds to help pay for your course and maybe put bread on the table, then studying over a slightly longer period and having longer to pay the fees is definitely a very realistic option. It's not a race to get yourself qualified. What you need to do is to make sure that you stay sane, that you don't jeopardize your mental health by taking on too much paid work alongside a full-time course. Sometimes taking part-time study alongside a full-time job or even a part-time job is the better option. It may well get you qualified quicker and leave you happier along the way. So part-time study and part-time work is certainly something that we'll talk about with the students today, because a few of them have done it. Taking a gap year, obviously for obvious reasons, gives you an opportunity to generate some savings in that time. And we've got one of our students here who's done that. Living with relatives, as I did when I did my solicitor's course back in the day, still as relevant now, obviously for saving money. And then you got the opportunity, if you come to BPP, to be a campus ambassador whilst you're at your university. And we're currently recruiting for campus ambassadors. So if you're interested, and this is for the next academic year, so if you're only in your first or second year at the moment and you're interested in being a campus ambassador in the next academic year, just send an email to lawoutreach@bpp.com. We'll give you that address at the end, but lawoutreach@bpp.com, we can give you more information about that, because that can give you access to funding. We've got an Advocate of the Year competition we run for wannabe barristers. That goes through the university bar societies normally, who submit competitors every year. And there are large scholarships for first, second and third place in that competition, which ends up at the Old Bailey, which is great fun for those who get there. And there are Inns of Court scholarships, which one of our students here today has managed to achieve in relation to a bar pathway. So just touching on each of those in turn there, what we're going to do now is to explore a lot of these in much more detail, and feel free to punt in the questions as you go along. So we're going to look at the case studies now. So first of all, Caitlin, welcome. Perhaps you just want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your journey to law school, tell us a bit about your background, share as much or as little as you like, just to give us an indication of how you got yourself to law school, your journey through university and so on.
Yeah, so I went to the University of Leeds for my undergraduate. I did just a law degree, and then having completed and graduated in 2022, I then worked for 2 years at the Crown Court in Leeds in order to save up some money essentially and gain relevant experience to then complete the barrister training course and also apply for pupillage. So I started the BTC in September this year, and that's at the Leeds campus, BPP Leeds. As you can see, I'm doing it with the integrated masters. So that means that rather than finishing in April, at the end of the bar part of the course, I will then be doing the additional masters so that I have access to the master's funding, and also obviously to get the master's degree on top of the bar. And
Can
then,
I just stop you there for a second? That'd be really helpful. Let's just pick up that theme actually. That's quite helpful. So you chose to do the master's version of the course. So you went straight onto the bar course because you had a law degree, presumably, or did you do a conversion course before then?
No, yeah, so I just did my law degree at undergraduate and then the bar afterwards.
Yeah. And so you chose to do the masters to access over £12,000 worth of funding.
Yeah.
Just to give students an idea that so you're on the full-time course, which started in September. As you said, you got
Yeah.
the bar, or will get the bar stuff out of the way by the April, and then just focus on the master's piece in the final third term. So what does that third term consist of?
So the masters in the third term essentially consists of it's called a professional project. It's somewhat similar to writing a smaller version of your dissertation, so to speak. It's a 5,000 word essay with topics like you would expect for a dissertation, and you can choose your area of interest, obviously legal area of interest, and then choose a title within that area. So I'm doing mine. I've already chosen mine. We chose them towards the start of the course, about joint enterprise and criminal law. So you write your 5,000 words, and then you also have a reflection, which is a couple of thousand words as well, just about your research and how you've gone about compiling your project itself. But and within that, you have, similar to a dissertation, you'll have meetings with your supervisor who's been assigned to you.
Excellent. So effectively, you can choose to do the bar course on itself, which wouldn't get any funding, just the BTC, the barrister training course, but to do that extra term, to get that funding of, I think it's £12,471 at the moment. It will probably be closer to 13, if not more than 13,000 for September. You have to do this project. And depending on which university you go to, our biggest competitors at BPP run master's versions of their various courses. That their master's terms will look slightly different, but there'll be variations on similar themes to the ones you hear today. So, Caitlin, so part of your strategy was obviously to raise a significant proportion of the fees for the course through the master's loan. But of course, you've got to live off, you've got to be able to afford your rent and your food and everything else. So where was the other large chunk of money that you got to help support you during the year?
So I applied for an Inns of Court scholarship, which for me was the main chunk of money I got. It was substantially more than anything else that I got. that's really what's enabled me to be able to study. So anyone who's looking at the bar route, it's not available for the solicitor route, as Inns of Court are a barrister thing. But it's something that you would apply for when you're in your third year, or if you're postgraduate, the year before you're wanting to start your bar course. And the Inns offer, it varies slightly, but essentially it's around up to 20-ish thousand pounds, which is usually means tested. But obviously, if you can get a big amount, which I did, it really can help you.
What was the secret of your success, do you think, in terms of your ability to land a sizable award from your end?
Being prepared for your application. It's hard to write an application, but make sure it's well thought out, well structured, and then prepare for your interview. You know roughly what they're going to ask you. Why do you want to be a barrister? Why do you think you'd be good at it? Show me a time you've done this. If you can be prepared for those answers already, so you have something to say when they ask you it.
So quite a few competency-based questions by the sounds of it then. Okay, and let's just go through the process for this, because I know a lot of people on this call, maybe in their first year or even in their second year, are not familiar with the process. You have to apply very early on in your final year of your university course, don't you, if you're looking to go straight onto a bar course. Do you remember roughly when the deadline was? I know it, but I'm sure you probably remember.
The deadline is usually the first Friday of November. To get your, so obviously that the date will slightly vary, but it's the first Friday of November, and then so there's 4 Inns, 2 of them will do a paper sift and only invite the people who make it through the paper sift to interview, that being Lincoln's Inn and Gray's Inn. However, Middle Temple and Inner Temple, who I'm with, interview everyone, and roughly your interviews will be at some point in March.
And just to be clear, so you apply if you're a third year and your final year of university, you apply in the by the first Friday in November of your first year of your final year. Sorry, so only at the beginning of the first term or middle of the first term. It's about 10 months before your course would start. So a lot of people miss that deadline and aren't aware of it, and they have to take a gap year if they want that funding. Great stuff. And therefore, and then you said you got interviewed, because everybody who applied to your Inn gets interviewed. What was the toughest question you thought you had at the interview?
They asked me, what's a question you don't want to be asked? I thought that was quite a mean question.
Ooh. How honest were you in your reply? No, don't tell me that. What did you come up with?
I spoke about it did throw me off actually, and then I got asked it again at pupillage, and I thought of a better answer this time. I spoke about imposter syndrome and things like that, within what I didn't want to be asked about, but I made a little bit of a joke out of it, because I was like, well, what, I was surprised that they'd asked me that. But they also, which a lot of them will have some form of task as well, which can be hard, or can be seen as a harder thing to answer than perhaps just a competency-based question. So for Inner Temple, they ask you to read a judgment. So you go in person, they'll take you to the library, and you will read a recent-ish judgment. It'll only be short. They won't give you a really long one, because you won't be able to read it in time. And then when you get into your interview room, they then will ask you questions like, what was decided? What were the reasons? What were the key points to take away from it? Just things that you should have picked up on from reading it. So obviously that's quite a good test of your skills, which is again something that I, for example, printed off lots of recent shortish judgments and practiced doing that beforehand. So it's just being aware of the kind of things that they can get you to do.
Wow, that's really, really helpful advice for anybody who. Which Inn was that? Who set that task? Remind everyone.
That was Inner
Temple. Well, congratulations on your Intercourt scholarship. And that wasn't the end of your funding sources, as we can see from the slide. So to be a BPP advocacy scholar, what did you need to do
So you submit a brief application, and then you have to do a interview which included an advocacy task, which was a plea and mitigation. So if you were essentially the defence barrister, giving submissions about why the court should give a lower sentence to your client. So you were given the papers. It was quite a simple case, obviously, because they don't expect you to have a really high degree of understanding. It's more just to see how you would be saying it out loud and how you structure it. So having done that, I was awarded the advocacy scholarship. But it was only a one stage. It wasn't more than one interview or anything like that.
Yeah, we try and at BPP streamline the scholarships. We have a lot of money to award in scholarships, over I think coming up this year over $1.5 million in scholarships for all the law school. But what we try and do is, we know your time is really precious for your finals, and we don't want you eating up more time than you necessarily need to. So we have a short application process for all our scholarships. And for the advocacy scholarship, there's this task, as Caitlin says, where there's this case study. I think we gave you a little bit of a lesson on pleas and mitigation and bail, but you have. Having worked in the Crown Court, it must have been water off a duck's back for you. It must have been quite a nice task.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Getting valuable, useful work experience can
Yeah.
sometimes give you very much an advantage. And you've been a campus ambassador and a student ambassador. So let's deal with this chronologically. A campus ambassador when you were at your university in Leeds. What did that involve?
Yeah, so I was a campus ambassador in my final year, and it essentially meant liaising with the outreach team at BPP, helping to organise events and promoting events like this. So it entailed in-person events, for example. We did panel events, networking, just things, career-based events, essentially, like what I'm presuming most people will be attending at their universities. And it just meant promoting this as well on social media, within like the Law Society, the Bar Society, and getting people to engage with BPP's careers. But I thought it's served me really well in terms of it was work that I did within my third year, but it means that now, obviously a few years on, I've been able to reap the reward of having the financial gain for it essentially is taken as a discount on my course fee. So it's been really helpful, and I'm really glad that I did that.
Yeah, and if you're interested in doing that, Bethany, if you could be so kind, I think I've sent the email address to if anyone's interested in doing a role like that to secure effectively a scholarship discount off your fees. If you could replicate that in the chat to the students, that'd be really helpful. Thank you, Bethany. And whilst you've been at BPP, you've also had some additional responsibilities and been a student ambassador for us whilst you're here. What did that involve?
Yeah, so it's essentially just doing talks like this. So I've done talks about getting the Inns of Court scholarships, like I've just spoke about, talks about getting pupillage, which I'm fortunate to be starting in September. So it means that I've been able to talk about my experiences of that, just careers-based things, and helping with all of the events that BPP put on. So again, it's really worth doing in order to just make the course that bit easier without the financial worry. For the sake of a bit of your time, it's definitely worth looking into. And again, I'm really glad that it's something I've done.
Yeah, I suppose it helps you get more confident on your feet and speaking to people you've not spoken to before, which is going to be your line of work going forwards. Did you do law fairs as well? Did you attend any law fairs?
Yeah, so I did Leeds, I did Manchester as well. But between all the campus ambassadors, there's been at least one at pretty much all of the law fairs that BPP have attended. So it's a good way of getting to speak to lots of people.
Yeah, networking as well. So
Yeah.
a really good way. So just my final question before we go on to San and Freya. Did you need to, or did you choose to work, or deliberately choose not to work in paid employment alongside your studies so far?
So I chose not to, on the basis that I had all of these scholarships in place for myself. But if I wasn't going to before I knew whether I'd got an Inns of Court scholarship or not, my decision was going to be to study part-time and work alongside it if I didn't have that big chunk of money. That really was it turned the tipping point, so to speak, so that I didn't have to work. But it's definitely an option that I think helps a lot of people if you just don't have the time to or the finances to work at the moment. It's definitely worth thinking about doing part-time.
So, and I'll ask the same question to both San and Freya. Had you obviously not hit the numbers you needed to be able to finance the course and live during your course, how do you think you would have found had you done the full-time course and done, I don't know, 2 or 3 days work a week alongside it? Would you have managed?
Some of my friends do. I think 3 would probably be a push. I think some of my friends do 2 days a week. So you're not in uni every day anyway. Usually they try and aim for you to be in 3 days a week. So you could technically do your weekends as well. A lot of my friends do perhaps 2 days of working, and they do find it okay. But obviously, if you don't have to, then you don't need to. But it is doable to do a few days alongside, I think.
Yeah, I think BPP's official line when asked is 1 is okay. If you're reasonably well organised, you should be able to cope with 1.
Yeah.
When you get to 2 or more, it just puts you under more pressure, and we would try and discourage people from doing that. But we know what it's like, how difficult it is with rents being what they are and the cost of living and all that. But that's what the part-time course is there for, and I'm pleased that you had that in your sights as a realistic option, which it certainly is for all of our courses, like we just discussed. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin. That's been really enlightening. If we could now move on to San. Good afternoon, San. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, my name's San. I'm doing the law conversion, just the postgraduate diploma of law at BPP in Bristol. I think I applied quite late, actually. It's a bit of a last minute. I was doing an R-ing as well about whether I was gonna self-fund or maybe potentially wait till after I'd applied for training contracts. But I applied and also applied for a career commitment scholarship when I was first doing it, and I did get that, and that really encouraged me to sort of like go ahead with potentially self-funding. And originally, before I got my training contract, I was on the LLM version because obviously you can get access to the funding and the loans if you're on the LLM. So I was originally on the LLM, but now that I have a training contract, I switched to the postgraduate diploma of law because my employers are now covering the fees. But before this, in the summer and kind of over Easter, like I'd been saving, and I actually paid the first installment myself and took a bit of leap of faith, basically. And yeah, managed to get my training contract about 3 months ago now, and that's where I'm at with this.
Fabulous. So what was your background in terms of your degree? Where did you study? What course did you study? Because obviously it wasn't a law subject.
Yeah, no, so I was non-law undergrad. I did biochem for my undergrad. I did quite a big 360. I did biochem at Exeter, and then I think when I was in second year of uni, I did kind of like a niche internship in intellectual property over the summer, and I really liked it. And then kind of like figured out that if I want to go down this route, that I needed to kind of do the law conversion, potentially apply for training contracts. So that's what's kind of led me here.
Great stuff. And do you want to share with the audience who you managed to secure your training contract with?
Yeah, so I've got a training contract with A&O Sherman now. I got onto that through the winter VAC scheme, so that's what I did in December, and then got directly recruited from that. But I know that they also do direct training contract recruitment as well.
And it means obviously you're coming to BPP to study for your course because A&O Sherman send their trainees to BPP. So we'll get to see you in the next part of your studies. So it was interesting. You took a leap of faith, as quite a lot of students do, without a training contract, in confidence in your own ability to be able to get there. What sort of what sort of support did you get from the careers team in relation to the application process?
Honestly, the careers
training
team were
contract?
really amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, in relation to your training contract, obviously it's one way to finance your studies, and obviously you took that leap of faith, and one of the benefits of doing that and coming to BPP is that you get that really expert advice. So you said it was really helpful. Do you want to sort of outline what that was?
Yeah. So I got an offer for my assessment center. I think this was probably about 3-4 weeks into like doing the law conversion. And I had got to an assessment center, I think 1 or 2 the previous year. But obviously I wasn't doing law, so I really just didn't understand what was going on at assessment centers. I didn't really know what commercial awareness was. I definitely did not know how to handle like case studies and written exercises, because they weren't really the usual things that I did in my degree as a non-law. But the BPP Careers website has so many like amazing resources, which I honestly would not have had access to when I was still doing my undergrad. And I got appointments with all the careers counselors, and I did a lot of like mock interviews. Also like run through of like my feedback from previous assessment centers where I maybe like haven't done as well. And that was the only I did all that practice. I did my assessment center and got onto the VAC scheme, and I feel like that was really like valuable because I didn't have that last year. I didn't get a training contract, and obviously this year I've had the support and now I do have a training contract, so obviously there's a correlation there. And definitely starting law, I think I felt less stressed at assessment centers because I actually understood what was going on in all the tasks. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a real chicken and egg thing, that I think it's a very individual decision that students take to start a course with or without a training contract. And yeah, if you have confidence in your ability, then yeah, sometimes it's easier to make that leap. But not everybody gets a training contract, but you were fortunate enough to do so, and many congratulations in doing that. But obviously you had to take that leap of faith and have a plan B in case that didn't come off. So you got the career commitment scholarship, which do you just want to explain a little bit about? Do you remember the sort of questions you were asked, or was it a long-winded process? Don't worry about the specific questions. I'm sure you don't remember them, but was it a long-winded process or quite a quick way to
No,
apply?
not at all. Basically, after I put in my initial application for the law conversion, there's like an additional thing you open to apply for a career commitment scholarship. And I think the questions were basically just, it was kind of like why you think you like would fit the criteria for career commitment scholarship. I think it was kind of maybe to talk about any experience you'd had in law, or why you're passionate about law and why you'd benefit from a scholarship, if I remember. It wasn't long at all, and that's all I had to do basically. And they then basically just told you within a few days of getting accepted whether you had the career commitment scholarship or not. But it was really short. There was no like interview or anything else for that scholarship.
Yeah, you just have to make an application for a place on a course. You don't have to have accepted it to make the application for the scholarship. I'll talk a little bit more about the scholarships in more detail that we offer. And as I said earlier, we are revamping our scholarships for September intake, but we're certainly talking about the current scholarships, which are going to be very much a similar theme to the ones going forward. You work part-time in the summer and Easter holidays. Is this before the course started, or whilst you were at uni, or whilst you were on the course itself?
Yeah, so when I was doing my undergrad, that's what I did kind of every year. I worked over summer and Easter, but I think 2024 summer when I graduated from my undergrad, I was kind of in this situation where I thought I was maybe potentially going to be self-funding some of the GDL. So I like worked a bit extra. I worked pretty much full time over the end of July and August to save money. And I did also move home. So because I'm at BPP Bristol, I commute from home in Cardiff, which obviously like saves me massively on living expenses and things like that. But at the minute I work kind of like part-time as a tutor and a TA with like in Cardiff. But I'm quite lucky that I work with an agency, so I can kind of pick up shifts like when I want to. I don't have like a set number of days that I go in for work. So it's quite flexible around when I'm at BPP.
Great stuff. So roughly how many hours a week do you feel you can manage alongside the course? Be interesting to sort of compare that with Caitlin and Freya's experience. Be honest, if you've done more than what I said you should do and you're managing, that's fine. But if you think there's a finite number that any student really should consider, it'd be helpful.
I honestly think it's like different every week. Like this week I've been working less because I'm trying to finish my formatives. I think maybe like in week 1 and 2 I did work the 2 out of the 5 days, like both like full days basically. But like I say, I kind of can choose when I want to work a bit more or less. I don't think I would manage more than 2 days, just because I feel like I've struggled maybe starting on the law conversion because of how different my undergrad was to the learning format and things like that. But yeah, it's been a really good option for me to kind of have agency work and just make work around my studies.
How does the workload compare compared to your undergraduate studies?
I definitely think they're similar, but they're just very different in terms of like I only go into BPP Bristol like 2 or 3 days a week for like the in-person seminars, and then obviously the other 2 days I'm at home and then I kind of like do my own study. Whereas when I did my undergrad, it was very much in person, and I think maybe more like 5 days a week. I think workload is similar, but I feel like it takes me a bit longer to get my head around things on this course, just 'cause I'm doing the same thing for 3 years before, and now I'm doing something completely different. But it's definitely gotten better as it's gone along.
Yeah, I think a lot of conversion students would say that. Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for that, San. We'll come back to you for more questions, I'm sure, towards the end of the session. Let's move on and talk to Freya. And welcome, Freya. Last but
Hello.
not least, nice to see you there. So do you want to give us a bit of background about your journey to your course, your current law conversion course? You're doing a master's with the SQE1. So rather than what San did was just do the conversion course on its own, you've chosen to do the integrated masters. Although San said she started off with a master's, but then managed to extricate herself from it. So give us a bit of background in terms of your studies up to the point of joining BPP.
Sure. So I'm actually originally from the north of England, and I went and did my undergraduate degree at the University of Edinburgh. I studied modern languages, and the best thing about a modern languages degree is that you get to go abroad. But unfortunately, because of when I did my degree, I was not able to do so. So I took a gap year in the middle of university, and I worked, which I'll probably come back to later. I graduated in 2024, and I decided to come and do the law conversion course at BPP. And at some point during that process, I became aware that I would be able to do it as a master's with the SQE1. And I knew from quite early on that I wanted to go down the solicitor route. So for me, to be honest, it was kind of a no-brainer that I wanted to do it this way around, particularly as I hadn't been successful in getting a training contract.
Great stuff. So your strategy was, I know I want to be a solicitor. I can get the funding for not just my conversion, but also SQE1, which is the biggest hurdle. So yeah, not having to worry about finding thousands and thousands of pounds by doing even more work, and then the fees as well for the SQE. It means that your total bill that you have to find in the next year or two is much smaller. Of course, the loan has to be repaid, but it's longer term. As I get that. Excellent.
Yes.
So your gap year before you joined, so did you manage to save quite a bit of money to give yourself a bit of a buffer?
Yes, so I was working 2 part-time jobs. I was working in person 3 days a week at just a corner shop, and I was working online as a tutor, pretty much about 6 days a week, but only a couple of hours a day. I was also living in not a very expensive area of the country, and sharing rent, so I was able to save up quite a bit of money during that year. And because of where I went on my year abroad, that was also not a very expensive place. So I ended up saving quite a lot of money during that year too, which has been really nice and has meant that I had a little bit more savings than I would have had otherwise. Yeah.
Great stuff. And excuse me, frog in the throat there. And did that, when you were budgeting, obviously you've got to think ahead. You're still in your conversion part of your master, so relatively in the first half, certainly. Have you managed to save up the SQE exam fees already? Are they sitting there somewhere for you to draw down on, or are you still having to find the money between now and when you sit those assessments?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough that in my 5 years at university with the gap year, I was able to work enough during the holidays and my time off that I have now managed to save enough to pay for those fees. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and it's something that I would recommend if at all possible. I know a lot of students want to rush straight in to their postgraduate studies straight from uni, but if you haven't got the cash behind you, I see students under an enormous amount of pressure financially, and the course is stressful enough as it is, whether it's the conversion course, the bar course, or the SQE. What you don't want to be worrying about is whether you can afford to pay next month's instalment, and where on earth is the fees for the SQE coming from. I would rather students who to acknowledge the challenges they have financially take longer before they start a law course, but do so and give yourself the best chance of passing by having most, if not all, of the money saved in the way that Freya had there. And that was obviously a conscious decision, and I think it was very sensible. Working during the holidays, is that prior to joining BPP, or did you manage to do any work at Christmas?
So I did a little work at Christmas. Like San, I work for an agency, which particularly if you live in London is very easy to do. You don't tend to need any experience to join an agency. I was actually working during term time as well, at the start of the course. So for I'd say the first half term to first term, I was working once or twice a week, which kind of, as the course got more intense, dropped off. And now I'm working approximately 0 hours a week because I'm particularly finding the second semester quite difficult and quite intense compared to the first semester. So I have decided to, luckily I'm able to take some time off from working for money, and I'm able to put that time into my studies. But yeah, as for working in the holidays, I am looking for work for this summer coming because I don't think the agency work will be enough to work full time.
Great stuff. So in hindsight now, would you say if you had your time over again, you'd still work that first half term, or would you say to anybody, if you can save enough not to do it? What would your advice be?
Yes. So this academic year, I had not been successful in obtaining a training contract. And there's kind of a little voice in my head that says, maybe if you didn't take that shift that day and worked on an application, maybe you would have got one this year. I'm not sure. It depends, how much time you feel that you can put into applying for training contracts, because that's the best way to get the money back at the end of the day. So yeah, if I had my semester again, I probably would have worked a little less. But at the end of the day, it's still nice to have at least an illusion of financial freedom when you're studying for your masters.
Of course. And how are you doing on the training contract route at the moment?
So I made a couple of applications earlier on in the year, and unfortunately only got as far as an interview. Didn't manage to get on a winter vacation scheme. I'm still plodding away at them, but it's difficult alongside studies. So
yeah, and I think what I wanted to bring out from, I think you acknowledged it, that obviously every hour that you spend not focused on your career, whether it's studying or doing applications or researching on lawcareers.net, who are kindly hosting this event, or is an hour away from getting to the final goal. So again, yeah, what you can be doing if you're earning money in a gap year between university and your postgraduate course, you can be doing the research alongside a job at the same time there, without having to and earning the money that will support you during your postgraduate course and earn you extra time, which you've now experienced, which I'm sure you'll see the positive results come from that in due course, Freya. Great stuff. Well, final thing for you, just before we hand over to see whether there's any questions. We haven't talked about the process for obtaining the postgraduate loan from the government. Do you want to explain a little bit about the timing as to when you do that? When did you
Yeah, I'm
apply for
trying
your
to
master's
think
loan?
back. So I applied to BPP in, I believe it was the May. I accepted my place in the June when I got my undergraduate results. And I think after accepting my place, that was when I was able to get the documents that I needed to apply for the student finance. So I think I applied for student finance in the June or July. And I just had to kind of submit the documents of sort of when my start dates were, and yeah, sorry, it was quite a while ago now. I'm struggling to remember.
Well, I think Caitlin and Sam, maybe you can both pitch in there because you both applied. Although Sam, obviously, I presume you've paid yours back now since you've had to come off the masters.
Is that me?
Yeah. Was that?
Yeah.
Did you have to repay the monies that you drew down from the masters?
So I paid the first installment myself from savings, and then I was going to use basically the master's funding for the rest of my course. And then obviously took my leap of faith, got a training contract. So I didn't end up using it. But the reason I was a bit like back and forth about everything is because when I first applied to this, I was going to be using Student Finance Wales, and then I realised that I think I wasn't allowed to use Student Finance Wales. So I actually was like frantically looking at options for after I paid my first installment. But yeah, I didn't end up having to use it, so I'm not sure exactly how it works.
Well, actually, our courses historically weren't supported by Student Finance Wales, but they are now. So, which is good news.
Oh, great.
But, yeah. What was your experience in terms of applying then, Caitlin, for the loan? When did you apply? Did it take very long? Is there a lot of paperwork involved?
With the student loans company.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I applied. I think I'm trying to think when it was. I kept looking and the applications weren't open till quite close to the course. It was definitely within, I think it was over the summer period before I started in September. So it wasn't particularly a long time ahead. And it was a really easy application. It was easier than doing your undergraduate application, I found, because it's not as assessed on all of your parents' means and all of that kind of thing. It's just it's not means tested. It's just you're eligible. If you're doing this course, you're eligible for this amount of money. So it's a very quick application. It got approved really quickly, and it all got processed really quickly. And I haven't had any problems with getting any payments or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what I hear. It is quite a frictionless process for the vast majority of students, albeit for most of them over the summer before they start a course in September, if that's when you choose to start. But obviously, there's funding available for students who are looking to start at other times of the year as well, because not just a BPP, but other providers have courses that start all the way through the year. Well, we've ticked round to 10 to 5. We've got through an awful lot of stuff. So thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to ask in a moment, Bethany, if you can come up with any questions of your own or anything that's come up from the students. But just before we do, I just wanted to just give a bit of background in terms of the BPP scholarships, because all of our students here have received at least one of our scholarships. And generally speaking, there is one gateway, apart from the advocacy scholarship that Caitlin discussed. Our regular scholarships all go through one gateway, effectively through our scholarships page. And what we're looking for is not the same thing from every candidate. So if you can see, there are sort of 8 bullet points at the bottom there. And what I generally say to a student is, if in the 4 questions that you get asked by us, so they're all very generic, general questions, they'll all give you the opportunity to talk about your academics, or whether you've overcome personal challenges, your advocacy skills, your commitment to your career, any volunteering background you've done, any particular hardship that you've had, whether it's health-wise, financial-wise, any leadership skills you've picked up. We want to particularly hear from socially mobile students, because all our full fee and half fee, all our full fee scholarships get awarded on a social mobility basis. We want to know more about you. Share as much as you can when answering the questions, because the more you do, the higher, generally speaking, we can score you, because we have a matrix of scores that will flush out stuff in these major areas here. And if you're strong in at least two of these, then there's every opportunity you will be awarded at least a couple of £1,000 worth of a scholarship from us. There are a host of other scholarships that we do offer. Not just the career commitment, which is our general scholarship, and we're reviewing the title and also the denomination that is likely to increase. But we have full fee scholarships as well. So one's based on academic excellence at the moment, one on leadership and innovation, and one on more of a socially mobile category here. So if you've overcome financial, health, family obstacles, or if you made outstanding contributions to your local community, whether volunteering or supporting people in the local community, we want to know about that, because we think that will also make as much as a good lawyer as anybody who's got academic excellence. And we've talked about advocacy and scholarships already, but there's also an excellent scholarship as well for anyone who's got a first-class degree who gets awarded a place on the BTC, and an international postgraduate bursary of £1,000 for first-class honours from anybody doing one of our courses from abroad. So there's a whole range of scholarships we have to offer. Obviously, they're different wherever you go. We hope that you'll consider BPP, but if you decide to go somewhere else, do check out the scholarships. You've got to be in it to win it, as they say. And if you don't apply and get the money, somebody else will. And then there's a whole host of other scholarships that we finance from external organisations. I won't go through them one by one, but I've mentioned our Ambassador Scholarship and our Advocate of the Year Scholarship in my initial comments, but we support organisations like the Law Society's Diversity Scheme, that's for students from socially mobile backgrounds, and the AS Foundation, which is the charitable wing of the well-known charity Aspiring Solicitors. We have a number of scholarships with them, and also not on the list here, we also have scholarships with Bridging the Bar that we fund, which is another charity that supports people into the bar through their programs. So lots of stuff we've covered. Bethany, anything that you want to ask, or anything that's come out from the students' questions? That
we've just had a flurry of last-minute questions, so I'll ping them over. There's a couple about scholarships, actually, about the BPP scholarships. So how competitive are they, Jonny, to apply to?
It's a really good question. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've got over £1.5 million of scholarships that we award every year. And that means that many hundreds of students, I think it's about 300 plus students, get awarded scholarships. So that's quite a lot of students. So yes, it is a competitive process in the sense that, yeah, there are far more people that apply than we can make awards to, but it's not as if we're just handing them out to half a dozen people. So when I said got to be in it to win it, you do yourself a good application. Don't just knock out the answer in 5 minutes. You really need to think about your answers. And if we give you a word count of 300 words, don't write 45, because you will not get the scholarship. It just doesn't mean you're taking it seriously, because everyone's got something to say to all the questions. And I firmly believe if everybody spent the time that the successful candidates do, they ought to get a scholarship. But people don't. So invest the time. There are plenty of them out there. Sounds
like it's very similar to making a law firm application in that way, making the most of the opportunity and being full with your answers.
Absolutely. Answer the question, and make your answers as like a law firm application. Make your answers unique to you. If you just come up with stuff that's generic, it's going to bore the pants off the person who reads it. It won't be me, or even though I'm in charge of scholarships, it'll be my colleagues in my team that will review them. Tell us about you. Everybody's unique, and you've got your own unique experiences. Tell us what they are, and don't just write what you think everybody else would write or what you think we want to hear. I think the best scholarship applications are the ones which really share a lot of information about yourself and your achievements.
Great. And can you apply to multiple of those scholarships you mentioned, and could you be awarded multiple?
It's a bit complicated. There are some generally speaking, the highest denomination will trump the lower denomination, but you can aggregate, for example, a campus ambassador scholarship because that's stuff you earned whilst you're an undergraduate working for us, or you can use your BPP student ambassador scholarship like Caitlin has while she's working as a student with us, because those are effectively in lieu of receiving a salary from us. So you can aggregate the Advocate of the Year prize with the scholarship, but otherwise it's a question of you can't aggregate scholarships, but a couple of them you can.
You international students, is the process different? Similar, someone's just mentioned
We do
about
not discriminate
deposit.
against. We do not discriminate against international students when it comes to scholarships. You are as entitled to scholarships as much as anybody else.
And someone has asked Sam actually specifically, because I know you've got your A&O SHEM and training contract lined up, and someone has just asked if you're working there already. And I think maybe worth just confirming that that is something that's happening in the future.
Yeah, so no, you don't work whilst you're studying. It's set up really well so that they fund me to do the GDL and the SQE, and I'm completely funded to just focus on studies during those years. And so once I finish the SQE, I then start my training contract, which lasts for 2 years, and that's like 2 years where all I do is work. So basically you get the studying out of the way for 2 years in advance, or just 1 year if you're only sitting the SQE, and then you work for the firm exclusively for 2 years. So I'm not technically an employee yet, but I think they just say you're kind of like a sponsored student of the firm.
Yeah, great.
It's
Worth
worthwhile
pointing
just
out.
adding. Oh, you're probably going to point out the same thing as I was going to. You make your
Probably
point
you go.
I was going to mention that there are different ways you can train and study, and at the moment, and this is a big political issue as much as anything else, there are apprenticeships, solicitor apprenticeships,
Yes.
where you can be employed by a law firm on a solicitor apprenticeship, say working 4 days a week, and then you're on study leave for 1 day a week. So you could join the law firm straight from uni and then be released 1 day a week during your 2.5-year solicitor apprenticeship, and pick up your SQE qualifications along the way. I say it's a big political hot potato at the moment because it is very much up in the air in terms of the future of solicitor apprenticeships, and we await further news on that. I don't know if that was what was you were about to say,
Exactly
Bethany.
what I was about to say. So, perfect. I actually just had one question for Freya as well, just from me actually, because I saw we had lots of non-law students, and I just wondered that, nowadays there's a lot more variety of conversion courses options. So whether you had any thoughts on just how you chose which course that you did, and was the funding sort of getting that LLM funding part of it, that decision for you?
Yeah, so to be perfectly honest, I was looking at BPP and the University of Law. I made the decision based on a very arbitrary factor that was important to me, which is the commuting distance from where I was going to be living. I just found the commute that much easier from BPP. And as for why I did the LLM, it was, I knew I didn't want to write another dissertation or a professional project or anything like that. So I decided that if I was to do the master's version, then I would want to do the SQE exams rather than a professional project. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. We've got lots of information on Law Careers Net about all these different courses, and we have information about financing as well. Yeah, I think that we've all we've got time for. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my last poll, which is just to see what your key takeaway has been today. Oh, I can't share it because apparently I'm already sharing one. Never mind. Maybe have a think about what your key takeaway is. Is it that you have a better understanding of your legal funding options? Are you confident on the next steps of your legal career journey? Do you know more about the courses and funding options available at BPP? Or is it something else? But yeah, that's all we've got time for today, really. So just want to say a big thank you to Jonny and our panelists. And just a reminder to all our attendees that a link will be sent out to the recording of this session. So please do keep an eye out for that. and a survey also pops up once this masterclass has ended, so do fill that in so you can let us know how you enjoyed today and what other topics you would like to cover. And again, we have another masterclass with BPP at the end of March, so do check that out, and all of Law Careers Net events are on the LCN events page, which will be linked as well. Jonny, is that any closing remarks from you?
I would just say thank you so much to all three students, Freya, San and Caitlin. You were absolutely excellent advocates for yourselves and for students to show your journey. I wish everybody the very, very best. And I think my closing remark would be, it's not a race to get yourself to law school. I think what you need to be doing is making sure when you get to law school, you give yourself the best opportunity to pass. And that means looking after your mental health and not overcommitting to paid work alongside your studies. So if it means waiting another 6-12 months before you start a course, I think you'll find the benefits in the long run.
It's great advice to end on. So thank you very much. I will close the masterclass and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.